Ready to create a React app almost from scratch? Let's do it. Has everyone installed Create React App from NPM, which was part of the setup instructions? If you did it way back then, I'm actually going to ask you to do it again because it has been updated to 1.0. So you can run npm install -g for global, create React app. Should have had you do this a couple minutes ago in case that takes forever. It's not a very big package, honestly. Or at least it didn't take mine long. I don't know why. Probably because I already had it. Yep, here's that command again. So the Git repository that I put in Slack is one that we're going to use just to get the static assets out of to start our app, but we're going to create the app with Create React App. So go ahead and you can either clone this or just download it because you don't need the Git history. So yeah, you can just download the zip file if you want. I'm pasting that npm install command in Slack as well. I'm going to open up my ThingList static in a code window for reference so we can get to it. But we're going to start off with Create React App. So when you're ready to go, up in your main project folder or your main bootcamp folder, we're going to create a brand new project by typing create-react-app, and we're going to call it ThingList. Now it's going to do a bunch of stuff with Yarn or NPM. Yes. Yes, sir. Yep. So create React app and then the name of your app. Notice it says a few things. It tells us where it created it. And it says inside that directory you can run several commands: yarn start, yarn build, yarn test, yarn eject. We can also run npm start, npm run build, npm run test, npm run eject to accomplish the same thing. But if you have yarn, you may as well use it. It could be that Create React app, when you install it globally, automatically installs yarn. I'm not sure. So let's go into ThingList here. Not the static one that you cloned from me, but the one that we just created with Create React app. Make sure you're in that directory. Try typing yarn start. If that doesn't work, try typing npm start. But try yarn first. See if that works. Okay. Something's already running on port 3000. That's true. That would be my dev version. Not this time. Let's just try it again. Now, not only will that run your web server, it'll also open it in a tab. It opened one on my other screen. And this is just a default React app. To get started, edit source app.js and save to reload. Does everybody see that? So let's have a look at our code for this. I'm going to open up a new tab since my server's running. I just hit Command-T, Control-T on Windows. Open up a new tab. And I'm going to open up that code window. I'm going to go ahead and full screen this one. But I do still have my static version open here. Let's have a look at what we've got here. We see package.json. That is where your NPM packages are listed, and Yarn uses NPM packages. Has anybody used package management in some other language? What have you used it in? Python. Okay. So it's a pretty common way to manage the dependencies of your project. So if your project needs stuff from the outside, rather than just downloading those things and putting them somewhere in your path, you use NPM or Yarn to automatically manage that stuff. And among other things, it takes care of loading in the dependencies of your dependencies. So if you have some dependency that is itself dependent on jQuery, it'll automatically add jQuery. So if, for example, you added Foundation through here. We see there's not a whole lot of dependencies by default in Create React App. Just React itself, React DOM, which we learned we need, and a dev dependency of React scripts. So this is where the magic is. In fact, it's past 1.0 now. It's 1.0.5. Probably some bug fixes. So dev dependencies are things that you don't actually need when you run this in production, but you need it to develop it. And it's not uncommon for your dev dependencies to actually have way more stuff in it than your real dependencies. If we look at node modules, it's actually got a ton of stuff. So you can see it's a lot more than just these three things, because these three things depend on a lot of other things. Holy cow, that's a lot of things. You notice there's already a gitignore file. We talked about, or Seth talked about gitignore a little bit yesterday. It's already got node modules in there, which is good. It's got a few other things, like this DS store file. If you open a folder in Finder on a Mac, it automatically creates this. On Windows, it creates one called thumbsdb. You could also add that if you wanted, so it doesn't end up in your repo. So other people who clone your work don't end up with that file. And it has a README that is just the Create React App README, which tells you how to use it. It has a whole bunch of information. It's actually really handy. And this yarn.lock is one of the differences between NPM and Yarn we talked about, so that it tells exactly which version of everything that it installed. Because sometimes in the package JSON, you'll see things like this symbol, which means that it may not be exactly 15.5.4. It'll accept other like patch level revisions to that package. And if you want to be darn sure that everyone who installs this gets exactly the same version, you use that lock file. But that's only going to be honored if you're using Yarn. But most of it's in the source directory, as we know. We have index.js, which has almost nothing in it. It just imports React itself, our main app component, and renders that to the DOM, replacing this root element, which if you look in index.html, which is actually, I think, over here in public, you'll see we have this ID of root. So if we want to start making this thing a little more interesting, go ahead and change your title here. to ThingList, or whatever you want to call yours. Don't need to do a whole heck of a lot else inside index.html. I did make a favicon for this. We don't need this logo SVG, so we can delete it. Now this is going to break, of course. Oops. Because that's being used inside app.js. So go to app.js, stop importing logo, and take it out of your markup, your JSX. And that error goes away. But there's no sense in having that file in our repo because we're not going to use it. So since we've got something here, we may as well go ahead and let's see, does it create? It does not make a Git repository for us. It just puts a git ignore in there so that when we do, that'll already be honored. So let's go ahead and get init. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and check out a branch for morning. You don't need to do that, though. And let's go ahead and add everything, which means move it to the staging area, right? Or the index. And let's go ahead and make our initial commit. And I'm going to go ahead and create my repository for this. New repository. I create it inside this one where all of your projects live. Call it ThingList. We're going to use this trick to push an existing repository from the command line, which will add the remote and push it. Now in my case, I'm going to push it to origin morning. But you can just use that command as is. Now let's look at this static business and see what else we might need to do. So this has everything from index and all of our components and everything. So let's just little by little look at some of this stuff. Okay, we've got a favicon. We've got lots of versions of the favicon. We could copy those over if we wanted. So I'm just going to right-click on favicon ICO here and say reveal in Finder or reveal in Explorer on Windows, which gets me this window with everything that's in my static repo. And for my command line that's in my create React app, I can hit open space dot to open that. If you don't have that, if you're using Windows, remember you can just switch to the other code window, right click on one of these files and say reveal. Point is I want both of these open for the moment. And I'm going to take all of these up to basically everything except static CSS and static HTML. And I'm going to copy them over into my source directory, or my public directory, rather. Now, a couple of those files are already here, manifest.json and favicon.ico. I will overwrite them when I drag them. So let's copy these. I'll say replace. And if I look at static HTML here, all these links that are above the title are related to my favicons. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all those lines. And in my Create React app, in index HTML, which again is inside the public folder, let's leave those comments there for the moment. I'm going to paste them right above the two that are already in there. Because notice what it says about the use of public URL. It will be replaced with the URL of the public folder during the build. Only files inside the public folder can be referenced from the HTML. Okay. I'll just actually paste it in Slack. But all those link tags that were above the title. So the way they did this public URL / manifest and favicon.ico, we're going to do the same thing. So you can get rid of those lines probably, or you can leave them and just take out this version of the manifest. So in all of these hrefs and these links, go ahead and replace that / with public URL / which I just copied and pasted out of the manifest. That way we know they're pointed the right place. It might take some convincing for this thing to change the ThingList favicon over, but I did a hard refresh, and look, now I've got my little T here. Beautiful.